CJCC. That's right.
Like that.
Can I just come up?
Sure does.
All right, well, I'm pulling up the agenda and this thing was coming up. I think probably the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for the minutes. Did everybody get a copy of the minutes?
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? Minutes are approved.
I'm just, for the record, I'm assuming we're approving the updated ones or the
Updated,
revised ones, yeah, okay.
The ones that just came out, I think, day before yesterday.
Yep.
Okay.
Shooting safety applies.
Okay.
Yes, I can go ahead. My name is Kendra Carillon and I'm the Sexual Violence Program Coordinator at Embrace. I have an office partner to our Domestic Violence Program Coordinator. Her name is Stephanie. She was unable to make it today, so we'll probably try to come to another CJCC meeting in the future to talk more about Embrace overall and more of our programming. But today I just wanted to talk really quick about a program we offer called Seeking Safety. So for those that are not familiar with Embrace, we provide free and confidential services to survivors of domestic and sexual violence. And we understand that a lot of times substance use and trauma go hand in hand. And so that's why we offer this curriculum to survivors we work with. So it is free confidential support. We do one-on-one sessions. I handed out a flyer if you'd be willing to hang this up in your office spaces. But essentially, if you're working with someone that you know has experienced domestic or sexual violence, and they struggle with substance use, if you refer them over to us, we can go ahead and meet one-on-one and go through that curriculum with them. So, like I said, it's called Seeking Safety. There's about 25 topics that we go through. You know, someone can go through all of them. They can go through certain ones that they think that they're struggling with. Whatever works best. We're super flexible. So, yeah, just wanted to let everyone know that it's available. It's free. It's confidential for survivors to come in and do the program. So, any questions?
Where did the curriculum come from?
So it was, I don't have the exact source with me right now, but it was through a drug prevention program that came up with the curriculum, and it is evidence-based.
Okay, and so we could refer anybody with this type of background?
Yes, yep, anyone who has experienced trauma and struggles with substance use. Yes, and I did print off some little quarter sheets too, so that way if you wanna have like a little stack in your office, we can hold it grab. So I'll give you some of those too, and I'll leave these for people to grab afterwards.
We can put some by the clerk of court's office in that.
Oh, perfect.
Village.
Yeah.
Too. So
Perfect.
if you wanna drop some off up there, or I can take them after.
Yeah, I can drop them off at some point. Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
I only have 3 more passwords to put in before I get to the email, so. Thank you, Jim. Okay, discussion, possible motion, discussion of bylaw amendments. I don't see Jeremy Stewart's here though.
Jeremy's at an event. He's pursuing a passion of his. So I said, you have to go for this. Following. But he and I have met along with Emily, and anyway, here's the bottom line. We did not get, since the last meeting, we did not get, as far as I know, any recommendations. We've sent it out, I think, the last 2 months prior to the meeting where we were at in terms of the draft, and haven't received any feedback. That must mean we did a really good job. So it's our intention then to just take what we have, because we really know it too. We we understand that there's some organizational things going on here that we're gonna have to deal with. But, we're gonna send that out to the executive committee. And according to our bylaws, it is the executive committee that brings forward any potential changes to the bylaws. So that's what we'll do, and they can wrestle with it, and if they wanna consult with us again, fine, if not, that's fine too, but the bylaws do state, I believe, that those are to be coming forth from the executive committee. So you'll be getting it shortly.
Alright, I know I promised Jeremy some, suggested additions or changes to it, and I haven't gotten them to him.
Lizzie says you're muted.
Alright, how's that? Can you hear me, Lizzie? Alright, good, thank you.
And then to that point, I don't know if this is something that would go into the bylaws, or I was gonna ask that a future agenda item be to make the drug court oversight committee a committee of this group, you know, like juvenile is, like, you know, to more fully integrate everything, and so I don't know if that's something that would have to be in the bylaws, or if that's a future discussion.
So, excuse me, there's the section probably that we worked on the longest and the hardest, and Lizzie can chime in here, is the section on, I think we called it the program review committee, whose primary responsibility it is going to be to, obviously right now, the one program that we do have is the drug court, but ideally, we're gonna have some more in the future, and it's going to be up to this committee, made up of people from the treatment team and drug court, and individuals here in this group, to evaluate all programs, and provide oversight. And
That's part of what's happened in the bylaws already.
yeah, that's part of our suggestion, and we also suggest a specific makeup, and I don't have it in front of me right this minute, but I'm blind to the bat right now, but anyway, we'll get it out, and that'll be in there, and Judge, if you wanna send those, Jeremy and I can get together with, the young lady up there on the screen, Lizzie, and, try and incorporate those if you wanna do that, and then we'll send them out for the executive committee, we can do that, no problem.
And I'm glad to hear you say it. I hadn't brought it up at another meeting because we were talking about it, but it was actually something that I had sent to Judge Stewart before, because I think it does seem logical that be something that we do. I mean, we have the juvenile, review committee now that handles the truancy court, but I don't know that we really have kind of said reviewing that program or anything within that, but a program review committee is a good, it's not.
Because
I agree.
in, and I won't mention the county that I'm from, but, because our truancy court was a treatment court, that's what it was. We put that under the same rubric in our CJCC, was, provided oversight for that as well. In fact, we had an evaluation done by the state courts when they were still reviewing all the existing, treatment courts in the state, and they came and looked at our truancy court as well, so yes, definitely.
So if anybody else, if everybody wants to take another look at the bylaws, I know that they were sent out to everybody, but if anyone else has any other suggestions, then prior to the next meeting, I'll definitely get mine to Jeremy, I promise this
Okay.
time.
We'll deal with them.
Alright, relocation of supervision of drug court coordinator. I'll give a little bit of a overview, I guess. County board, it's been such a week, Thursday, just Tuesday night, approved relocation of supervision of the coordinator to DHHS. Kind of last minute, last week, the agenda of the county board, switched to include, and administration of the TAD grant. Sarah Rance for anybody who, I think most people know her. She's been interning with me. She interned with me in the DA's office. She has experience in the drug court because she worked on it last year. Did a very nice presentation, came up with a PowerPoint, and we gave that presentation. Lengthy, of course, as always, there's so much to talk about. To the county board, Ashley, Jeremy, Jamie, and I had met prior to that to say, you know, there are maybe some ramifications or things that people didn't think of when they wanted to just move everything to DHHS. One of which was, so Crystal in the DA's office had been doing the fiscal things. We separated that from the coordinator position for justifiable reasons in the past. And then what Ellen didn't know coming in is that there was an agreement with the county board when they added a paralegal position to the DA's office, that, you know, they were supportive of the drug court program and were struggling with meeting the match every year. And so part of the agreement in changing that position from a contracted to a permanent position was that Crystal would then do the finances because we could get the match. The problem, without going into too much, is with going into DHHS is a lot of DHHS positions are grant funded. When they're grant funded, we can't get match for them. The only way we can get match is if the position is funded with levy dollars. So we don't want to lose that. It's not a huge portion of our match, but we're struggling to make it. I mean, we were like $5,000 short the year before last, I think, on match. So, and you know, the name of the game with drug court is to, there are alternatives to incarceration. So, you know, we're not trying to put people in jail and increase expenses. And we get match dollars every time somebody is put in jail on a sanction. So, you know, it's kind of a catch-22, and that match is really important. We receive $123,000 a year in grant, and we have to match $41,000. So not that more things can't be done consistently in one area, but we just thought after talking that we need to take a step back and talk about what the bottom line is if we're gonna do those things. So the recommendation to the county board was just to move the supervision of the drug court coordinator for now. That was the big priority. It's, you know, it's a great move. So that's now going to happen. And, you know, we'll talk about in this group, you know, where we want to go with respect to recommendations from the evaluators and what other changes we want to do or keep it or where it is or whatever. But, with everyone talking about it, and so then we all know.
Well, and just as a point of clarification, it sounds like it was my recommendation. It wasn't. I mean, I made no recommendation to move the grant. I think at a personnel committee, I was asked how I would feel about that when somebody asked Jeremy if he would take on the grant as well as the supervision. And I have no opinion one way or the other. I mean, I wanna do what's best for the grant. If it makes sense to move it, I'm fine. My office is not gonna grasp or hang on to things that don't make sense for the county.
Good. Good. And I think, you know, Jeremy, we had a long discussion. Dave's in here. Mark, are you on DHHS too? I forget, I've been to so many committee meetings, but, so we did go to the DHHS committee, Jeremy and I, in July. He had concerns because all of a sudden the budget for the drug court ended up in his monthly report. And so we had a long discussion about about just moving things and how, so Jeremy has his own board. He has the DHHS board. Oversight right now for the court system is youth and justice. And so, you know, this is problematic. Now Jeremy has another committee that he would have to deal with. And so, you know, not everybody, personnel, finance, whoever, they don't necessarily understand all of those details. So then, you know, Jeremy came to me and said, will you come to the DHHS board? And we had discussion about those kinds of systematic issues. And it would just create more work for him, more confusion for committees. The drug court program is a very complex program. So again, just stepping back, talking about it, not that changes can't happen or shouldn't happen, but just to take a step back. So the recommendation from the DHHS board was that Jeremy, have supervision of the drug court coordinator, but with a strong recommendation that this body oversee the actual performance of the coordinator. Now, that may or may not be problematic in that, we've talked about that before, this body right now doesn't have the authority to do anything, but that doesn't mean that they can't, be working with the coordinator on performance. And
as part of that discussion, because that piece of things is in the DA's office, I'd like to be included in some of those discussions, because apparently I'm responsible, I'm signing off. And so, as somebody who's signing off on those things, I agree, having it so piecemeal and to have a coordinated effort would be important, and for all of us to talk about it would be important.
And that was a big part of our meeting the other day was, these conversations happen behind the scenes, but not all the people who are involved in it are part of that conversation. And so then, you implement changes and it's then like, oh no, what do? We didn't think of those things. So, we gotta have everybody there. And that's why I encourage this body to be where everybody brings up those discussions, so that we can brainstorm them. I'm not gonna think of everything. I mean, I've been involved in the drug court for a long time, but, we have other drug court team members here and things, so, then we don't have to go back and change anything.
And maybe a question, and I don't know, Judge, if this is, for Judge Stewart and Lizzie, I mean, would a fiscal committee make sense for this group? I don't know.
There is enough with the drug court, but my opinion is it could make sense, yeah. I mean, the grant, it's not all involved and that's dictated by the DOJ. We submit the grant, but we do grant modifications. I mean, right now, the fiscal things, any of the invoices come to me and I sign off. I think that's under the grant, so I have to continue to do that. And I don't have a problem with that portion of it, but it would be helpful if this body could also be involved in brainstorming, because very often at the end of the year, we have grant money left over because, we have to save it up to use for inpatient treatment, and if we don't send somebody to treatment, then we're getting closer to the end of the year, and, then the grantors are saying, you better spend this money because, we can't justify that it's needed if you're not using it. So, we're always trying to come up with those things, and it's very hard,
Well, then,
for us to do.
Judge, isn't there a grant oversight committee as an offshoot of this? I mean, would it make sense to start making that committee more robust as a grant committee?
Well, the grant review committee?
I don't know.
So there's in our,
Go ahead, Lizzie.
in our bylaw, it says that we have a committee, a standing committee that's a grant/funding committee. Not only is the purpose to seek out funding sources, but it's to, I'm sure that could fall under that standing committee that we already have.
But I would say, that's something we can look at, because maybe the committee exists, but maybe some additional definition as to responsibilities could be added. So if you would send that suggestion to either Jeremy or I or Lizzie, that would be great. The one thing, and I would caution, because we've had this discussion in talking about the bylaws, is, the bottom line is, we can't even support the committees that we have right now, because they don't even meet. They just don't. No report, no report, no report, no report, with the exception maybe of the youth committee, working on the truancy issue. So we were really reluctant to go too far, plus the creation of this program evaluation essentially committee is pretty extensive in the list that we put together of who should participate in that. So we don't want to suggest, well, let's have 4 more committees, because who the hell is gonna go to them?
Except they're already meeting, And if we take those committees and bring them into this group, then that makes this group more robust, and it's the place where that one thing is happening.
I think Judge Stewart's point is they're not meeting though.
Well, like, the quarterly or monthly oversight for drug court meetings.
Oh, for a drug court.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a way to not duplicate is all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think right now, I don't even know if we have anybody in our grant review committee in this organization, so yeah, I think we have in the past constantly looked at that, I think maybe for next month, we can come up with another list of committees and who's on them.
Enlighten me further, who is on that committee?
I wish I could enlighten you, because I don't think we have any, on the grant review committee?
Yes.
I don't think we did. I know at one time it was Nancy Hahn. I think Michelle was on, but now Michelle's just coming back again, hasn't been on CJCC for a long time.
I think those were the only two names I recall.
Well, I thought I heard that there was another committee that would be drawn into this group that would be overseen. Who is that?
The drug court quarterly meeting that meets, that is the oversight for drug court. So the drug court has a team that meets weekly about participants, and then they have another group that meets monthly or quarterly to do program oversight, and I was suggesting making that group a committee of this group.
Which is essentially the team.
Okay, what, yeah,
Which it shouldn't be,
Right,
but
there
in
should
my
be some
opinion,
more
because
people.
that, you can't oversight yourself.
that's my concern, is that if the recommendation of the Health and Human Services Board was to bring the programmatic oversight of the drug court coordinator to this body, obviously it would be really cumbersome to have the entire membership involved in, so that you probably would want a subcommittee. But it seems to me that it would be a conflict of interest for the members of the team to be overseeing themselves or the drug court coordinator, because then drug court coordinator sort of oversees the committee. So we'd have to come up with a membership of that committee that would be appropriate for that oversight. So.
And I think, isn't Judge Stewart, maybe you can comment, isn't that kind of the plan with the program review, is to include drug court team members on that?
Yes,
And maybe a
definitely.
graduate or something, and
Definitely, and there's, I'm trying to dig through my materials here and find that list of folks that we recommended, so, but I'm not having any luck right this minute. But
And I don't know how, whether we were going to be successful in convincing the county board to put that oversight responsibility to the CJCC, but that was the recommendation of the Health and Human Services Board.
yeah, and I think, I don't know how best to politically put this, I guess, drug court, right now is ripe with things, and these are conversations that we're having, so maybe that's gonna open the door. I think, some of the people who have been talking about, what they perceive to be the issues with drug court are realizing, that it is a little bit more complex than what they originally thought, and we can't just shove everything into a square peg into a round hole. So, maybe there will be, maybe that will change the attitude of some kind of authority for oversight with respect to that.
I found the page here, the Program Review Committee, based on we used the Wisconsin Treatment Court standards, and it says in addition to a number of things, it will serve as an advisory committee to the Russ County Treatment Court, okay? The makeup, I skipped some verbiage in there, but the makeup is Circuit Court Judge, District Attorney, State Public Defender Representative, Local Law Enforcement, County Board Rep, Treatment Court Coordinator, Health and Human Services Representative, Department of Corrections Representative, Treatment Court Graduate, and community member, and I think we added in the most recent version, a mental health and alcohol and drug, person.
I think there were a couple different ones, yeah, that were added to it.
So that's like two less than this board.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I know,
That's a lot of people. to be
And I
honest.
understand that, but again, we tried to go by the standards, so.
And that group's already meeting, and that's my point, it would not be a duplication, it would be taking that group and bringing it here and creating true oversight with different membership.
Okay, anything else on that? So I guess a lot of work to be done. I'm not sure if I have the most updated. So expectations of CJCC coordinator, and then underneath that was that job description? Or added? You had said it then.
And then,
I think the addendum is for the job
Yes.
board coordinator.
Right. Oh, this is CJCC, see, I get them mixed up. Okay, CJCC coordinator, had interviews. Ashley, do you wanna report?
Yes, so we had interviews for our CJCC coordinator earlier this week, and we have landed on someone that we would like to make an offer to. So I wanna hear from this committee what your expectations are from that coordinator. What do you wanna see this person accomplish while they're here?
Everything.
Well, we know that this group is supposed to be, evidence-based, and part of that is data collection. And so there needs to be one place where we're reviewing the information from all the departments and actually collecting the data we can analyze and use to make recommendations for the county.
that's a big one. I get, what I would suggest you take a look at and focus on are those, CJCC, guidelines from the feds. I mean, that pretty much lays out everything that group's supposed to do, including the coordinator of that group. And then secondarily to that, it would be looking at the, requirements for treatment courts. Those two things I think have to be the core. One tells you what CJCC is and should be doing and what its makeup is. And right now, the primary activity underwritten by this group is the treatment court. And we won't forget truancy court. But I think that's important too.
And I think, isn't it true that traditionally a position like that is supposed to assist the chair? So, for example, I think that person would collect the information from the membership in terms of what we want on agendas, right? And work with our chair to make sure that those things happen. I think that's also a position that would logically go on the grant committee, wouldn't it? Because again, with data collection and with reports and those kind of responsibilities would naturally include that activity.
You need to work with all the committees. That's just,
I think there's an important element that we need to be thinking about, and that is this is a time-limited position at this point. And one of the responsibilities I would think is that that person should be hopefully helping us educate the county for the purpose of a more stable and long-term role, and perhaps seeking funding from other grant sources or whatever to make it sustainable. At this point, I don't think the county would be convinced that they would wanna make that a county position funded by levy. So and that may be something in the future if we can make it successful and raise the profile of this body in the county's eyes, and show some thing is, I think that somebody could spend some time just, talking to the individuals on the CJCC. You know, we've got so many different disciplines represented. It's gonna be a learning curve for that person to, you know, figure out who we are and what we do. And, so I would really urge this body to commit themselves individually and as a body to support this person's role. And because I think part of it is to bring us better, closer together, and to, you know, figure out some of the bumps in the road that we've experienced and help us smooth those out and get us working more closely together and for long-term progress and success of all of the programs that we oversee and all of the departments. I think it can be helpful. I think there's a situation where some of our departments represented here have, you know, their own set of policies and procedures, and I think the other members of the group don't know what those are. And so when sometimes we have conflicts over that simply because the law enforcement has its policies, court has its policies, the team, the court, all these things have their own policies, but we don't understand everybody else's policies, and we need to bring those into focus. So that would be, I mean, it's gonna be a big job. So, let's not make it more difficult for that person by, you know, creating bumps in the road for them, but commit ourselves to really supporting and, making it successful.
At the same time, keeping in mind that it is only a part-time position, and it's gonna be so overwhelming. Incidentally, can I just ask, was it part of the posting that it was a one-year grant?
Yes, I believe it
Okay,
was.
okay,
But
good.
in the interview, we made that clear as well.
Oh, okay, good, good.
And were any other members of the CJCC involved in that interviewing process?
Mr. Willingham was.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't look at it this way, this group only meets 1 hour a month, so they've still got a few hours left to do a couple things.
True, true.
Okay, I would hope.
This is a big hour though.
Definitely will have to be,
Yeah.
I mean, expectation versus
I know.
priorities, I guess.
But a lot of times we would, because our coordinator would, take the responsibility for working with the chair and the vice chair to do agendas and all that kind of stuff. They were here at every meeting, and they basically took their direction every month from this group, as well as in the interim from the chair and the vice chair as to what they're supposed to be doing and what kinds of things they wanted them seeking out. Just as the data that you were talking about down there, boy, we'd sure like to know this, so that we can make some decisions or at least have some better insight, so.
Is that helpful to you, Ashley?
Yes.
Okay.
You found a location, except down by the boiler room in the basement?
They might have to be housed over by extension. I can't think of any other.
Well, there is the register and probate office that's open, but, I mean, we haven't been putting anybody in there because we have the vault, but the vault is closed, so I mean, if you know, just keep it in mind, that's fine. We have, some of the drug court telehealth room stuff that we gotta get set up now anyway, so then that would, you know, it's an office, and it's got the phone line and everything.
What about the offices across from the DA's where finance used to be? Is there any room in there?
Well, I'm surprised you haven't filled those up yet.
Well, the reason happened is I was told to put that on hold
Oh,
because the county was discussing either a remodel or building. And so that's why. But yes, but you know, I'm just saying. I was told that maybe a bathroom's gonna happen there, you know, I mean, I understand that, but I don't wanna interfere with what the county's already doing.
I can see Jeff's eyebrows going up, it's like, yeah. So,
Oh, I'm trying to be a team player.
well, and I think if that were to happen, just based on plumbing, it would be like closer to the end, but, so, just so you know, I was always telling the county board that we were busting at the seams in
And we
his
are.
office, so, that's why I said I'm surprised you haven't moved in there. Once they moved out, I would've like just been moving right in there.
Well, I was told maybe informally that, you know, you don't just go in there, that they're in discussions about building and about renovation versus, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't wanna interfere with what the county's doing, but yes, we need it.
Well, and it's not secure yet, you're in a
Right.
secure office, so
But
yeah,
I'm just
there's
saying, and-
logistics, but.
It could be part of a bigger plan that we all discussed.
Yeah, true. I guess that's an issue for them, so. Yeah, there is a room
Where is the register of deeds office?
right next to, you know where the conference room is for the drug court? Right next to that.
Oh,
There's
okay.
actually an adjoining door that goes through there.
That might be it.
It's pretty quiet.
Yeah, and they're up on third floor, which is.
Yes, and they will have to be working with case data and stuff like that too.
And if you're the chair in the interim between meetings, the chair really directs this person or works closely with this person.
And if they're trying to collect information from the courts and from the dean's office and from the court, yeah.
All right. Anything else here?
No,
All right, UW Extension, CJCC consensus decision-making training, Ellen, that's your area?
Well, and I think the, invitation went out, Judge and I met with, was it 3 or 4 judge, members from UW Extension? At least 3, yeah. And, you know, they've done these trainings around the state, they've done them for private groups, they've done them for government, they've done them, and I think it would really help build the health of this group in terms of, you know, better defining how this consensus decision-making works. They would come, first of all, to do that 2-hour presentation in October, and please put that on your calendars, to attend. And then they would come back and we would do facilitation exercises to actually then put into practice what we learned. And part of it too is, how do we want to define what consensus looks like? And our bylaws, I believe, already has a definition. Doesn't it, Judge?
I don't think it's in the bylaws, I think it just says consensus.
Oh, because I read them, and maybe I was looking at standards, but some people say like 60%. You know, 60% is what is, because you can't just let one person kibosh. And so I think if we are all on the same page as to what does it mean, how have we defined it, and then start practicing it, the one place and which topics are open to consensus versus which ones are made just simply unilaterally by somebody. And so I think those are really good discussions for us to have. The one place that the invitation didn't go out to Judge was the drug court team. Were you gonna send that out? Did you want me to do that? Because the drug court team is invited to this as well, not
I
just.
thought I sent it out to the
It
drug.
went to the CJCC and not to drug court.
Oh, if I could just get a list of who's on the drug court team, I can send it out.
So
Okay.
Neil set up
Oh, perfect.
a list,
Okay,
drug court team email list.
okay,
And I
great.
could have swore I did it.
I think it
Sometimes
only
I
went
just
to
don't
us,
hit
but-
send them things when you're looking at drafts, so, yeah, but we have been recording everything for the drug court team.
And I know it's hunting season, but I still would like you guys to get out of the field, just for those hours and then go back.
That is the peak of the rut there.
That's what I've been told, but you know, that's when they have some
Exactly right,
opening and Judge had opening, I mean, we looked and it's a
So this group has been in a rut for a long time.
I'll just get mine early, that's all I can say.
You know,
Come in your boots,
Major
whatever, you're
concern
going
where I
to
definitely
this,
try
rest your
not to
year
work
after
that
this.
week.
Okay, jail data and average daily population.
Priorities.
You wanna, Ashley's gonna do that?
You have the chart, don't you?
Yeah, I sent it out. Email.
Did everybody get the chart on that information? Jail data and,
Here we go. See,
There we go. This magically came up.
just like that.
Somebody could probably screen.
I'm trying to get to it, my computer is just not cooperating with me today.
Yeah. Mike's got it.
I'm used to having Carrie to have this.
Right, I've got it.
Ashley would have been hooked up for all of this, but it was the Zoom link that
Yeah. So next time.
Is there any, I guess, is there any questions on the jail population chart that you don't see on the screen?
Well, I had a question. What does this chart mean to you as law enforcement, as a sheriff?
What does it mean to me? It means that, in my opinion, that, people aren't being held in jail. Also the, number of bookings have gone down. You guys are looking at the yearly booking one, if you see that, they fluctuate up and down. We're way up in 18, we're way down in 20, COVID, because we refused to take people into jail. In 21, it back up about 250, and then it's, in 2022, it was down again. So that would have some bearing on the population, but,
faster than you search.
Sheriff, do you have any data on why those people are in custody? In other words, anything about the primary charges against them, or how many holds are you doing for DOC?
yeah, we probably could get that information.
How many serving sentence, how many pre-sentence, how many
Commissions of bail?
Okay. We can
How
certainly.
big of a
5 year?
I don't have internet.
I think that's plenty.
So that might be.
5 year?
I would like to know too, how much of this data represents like individuals versus, the total? Like, are there a number of individuals that are taking the majority of these days, if that makes sense to you?
Or how long someone's in jail?
Yeah.
The average time?
Yeah.
Okay, we can give you an average of, what's the average
Stay.
stay in a jail?
Yeah.
Sorry, we don't have internet, so I can't bring it up. That's my problem. I thought it was me, but it's internet. And so I don't remember what.
Is Zoom working?
Well, it's, the internet connection is like really, really choppy right now, so like my email won't come up.
Yeah, and mine is, I can't get anywhere, I can't receive email for some reason, but the Zoom is working.
I saw a couple of times it said unstable connections, so
Yeah, okay.
it just not be.
So it used to be,
And then this one.
oh, okay, cause I was gonna, yeah, and it used to be, George would give us every month, it would say how many holds, how many warrants, he just hand wrote that in there. So we do have, some historical data, cause I know that Lori saved all of that from before, probably up through last year, don't you think, George? Those
Oh,
forms.
it's been a while, I think, since we've done that. No, we can,
We'll put together a spreadsheet so that we can do it on a monthly meeting with the CJCC.
And then it would be good for our new coordinator
Yeah.
to keep the records for the body.
Or maybe the coordinator can come up with a form for George to.
Just while on the topic of the jail, I forgot to mention too, we are currently doing seeking safety in the jail weekly, and Stephanie alternate weeks, and that's been going wonderful, so.
What is it?
The seeking
Oh,
safety,
good.
we do this in a group, support group format inside the jail once a week. So yeah, that's been going really good, we get really good feedback from the people we meet with.
Good to hear. Alright, anything else on that?
oh, I think Craig's on
Jail construction update?
You gonna do that?
Sure. Jeff and George and Phil and I keep meeting with, Kurt Werner from Daniel's group and Corey Byer from bunch of architects about the needs for the new jail. It was projected that we would need, 96 some beds, and we are kind of reconsidering if that's a little too large for Rusk County and what our actual needs are in terms of beds. The latest proposal is that instead of removing the south wing of the courthouse, is that we consider kicking south from this side of the building and possibly taking over Minor Avenue. That issue is going to the city council in August, so we'll see what happens there. I don't know what Kurt is gonna come up with if he can't take over the street. But the thought with that is that if we put the jail going this way, it will easily tie into the courts. So that's about where we're at with discussions. Pretty preliminary still.
How many beds are there currently in the jail?
52.
And what they did is they went back 10 years and looked at the average increase, and then that's how they projected, and we projected out for 50 years. Is that what we projected? And that's where we come up with the number for the beds. We'll see where that number goes.
The other big piece that's driving the bus here is classification.
Correct.
We used to have 3 classifications, low, medium, minimum. Now there's 19.
You got male, female, you got, high, medium, and low. You've got, transgender, you've got, multiple, suspects to one crime, they can't be housed together. You've got,
Mental health?
A lot of it, yeah.
mental health, that's huge. You've got, bonds with no contacts between people. But yeah, they've got 19 listed that the state has listed of how we have to keep people separated. So when you have 6 blocks and you have 34 people where we have, and have to keep everybody separate, it just ain't happening. But mental health is a huge issue, not only in our county, but everywhere. That's something that, the sheriffs are discussing with the state, because there is no housing for these mental health people. And they're using the jails, and the jail isn't the place for mental health. But for the safety of the community, they gotta go somewhere. That's what the state feels it's working at this time, and
Well, and I think there's a tension there too. I mean, we, as a larger, mental health drive, wanted to shut down the institutions and then expected the community to step in and provide that. And when it didn't happen, now it's falling on you. Yeah.
I think this is a perfect opportunity for some collaboration. I do.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is, Mark.
because it's not just your responsibility, you're
Right.
providing housing in 3 squares, but it's up to some other agencies, like DHSS should be right there with some resources for you. And there may be some other groups or someone representing here, some community-based services and housing that could be working with you, because you're right, you shouldn't be housing. Just like our state prison system is like 62% mental health issues. 62%, and what do we do there? We do really expensive housing compared to yours.
it's not just the housing, now it's required our staff to deal with these, and they're not trained to do so. I mean, we're very lucky, we work very close with Health and Human Services, and they are there when we need them, but yeah, there needs to be something out there for them.
Well, and it's not that much different than the, drug and alcohol problem either. I mean, the jail is dealing with, very serious medical issues with detox in the jail. And, they aren't trained medical professional people, and, yeah, unfortunately, the criminal justice system is where it all meets the corner there, that, they start to get into legal trouble. But So as we have these alternatives to incarceration, like the treatment court and stuff, then how does that affect? Because I don't think the push is for bigger jails, right? So, I mean, you're already having conversations to say that a 96-bed jail might not be
Well,
what you need.
that number's based on 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if we go back to a 30-year jail where they're gonna look at where they're at, the number would be smaller, but.
Yeah, a lot of things. to
It
consider.
may be on a downward swing, but then it goes this way, and then it goes this way.
Right.
It isn't like this, it isn't a steady climb, it isn't a steady decline. That's why it's a graph, it goes up and down, it goes up and down.
Yeah, when you only had to deal with male versus female separation at one time. Yeah.
But, you know, it used to be the male, female, and, you know, you might have had 33 males and only one female.
Mhm.
Half the population is female now. I mean, so, not only do you have all the classifications for male, you have all the classifications for female, so that's what drives that number of classifications up.
They've changed their design a lot, where now we have bigger areas, you know, dorms where you 8 people, cell blocks where you have 5, 6, 7 people. Now they've changed their design, so you only have 1 or 2 people in each
Okay.
individual area, so it makes it easier to.
Classify, because now you're only losing 1 bed
Sure,
versus losing 8 beds.
yeah, that makes sense.
So,
If we put a max guy in a 3-man, unless you have another max inmate, there's 2 beds dead. And then vice versa, if you put 2 max guys in a 8-man, you got 6 you can't use.
But that's where I wanna give kudos to Embrace, because that's what we're talking about here with their programming that they're bringing into the jail to provide for trauma and those kinds of things, of all those mental health issues, a lot of them derive from trauma.
Yeah,
And
I would be all connected, that's what I'm saying, like, we're talking about all these different crises, you know, in our community, and they're all connected. I mean, you can't address one without addressing the other, because most people we're working with have experienced or are currently struggling with all of the categories.
As long as we're talking about programming, we did have, just this last fall here, this last spring, 4 inmates obtained a GED while in custody.
Good. I like hearing that. Are they coming right there to the jail to work with them?
So in this day and age, is it totally realistic to plan 50 years ahead? I can't imagine that,
You wanna try to.
you know, that the kind of change that takes place, that anybody could even predict what's gonna be, what the need is gonna be, or I mean, other than just numbers, but.
I would imagine part of that calculation is you don't wanna be planning 20 years in advance and then building something
Yeah.
in 20 years.
Yeah, right, it's
that gamble's out there.
it's kind of a catch-22, but at the same time, you don't wanna create something where there's an incentive to do things a certain way because we've got the capacity to provide that. That's a big problem.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, which I know I sound like, you know this, Dave, you've heard it before. But what happens is the more evidence-based alternatives and effective justice strategies you implement, the less jail beds you need. And you can go to any county in the state, and I'll bet half of my next social security check, that you will find that once they built their new facilities, jail population increased. In the last 25 years, Dunn County, we had to have 160 beds because by God, we were going up almost 10% a year. And you know what? We're not 5% higher than we were when we built those 160 beds, and now they're sitting there empty, or we're renting them out to other counties for $38 a day. Now, that's pure genius, but what has caused that decrease in great part is we're incarcerating less people. One of the things you know once you study this stuff is if you deal with those medium and low risk people and keep them out of your freaking jail, the better off you are. it reduces the likelihood they're coming back.
Yes.
And that's what this whole thing is about, keep them from coming back. Reduce recidivism, that's what it's about, because if you reduce recidivism, you make the public more safe,
Absolutely.
period. So, you know, I've just fought this in too many counties with jails, and this is nothing against what you're trying to do, Sheriff. I understand your facilities need some upgrading, trust me, I understand that. But this whole discussion of having to build more and bigger, and we're definitely going up. I sat on a committee in the Supreme Court for years, for almost 9 years, with some of the county administrators from the biggest counties in the state, who said, we can't afford to build more jails. You know what? They started in a lot of these programs like treatment courts, and they didn't have to build any new jails, because their population started decreasing. They started dealing with risk and how you use that to set bond, as opposed to having lots of people in there because they can't vote. They had very few, only the high-risk folks, not the medium and low risk. So, okay, broken record, we'll shut up.
Well, it's good to talk about, because you don't think about things. I, myself, even being in the system, don't think about how much more room is needed just because of their classifications too. So, I mean, 19 is a big issue, but, so then I think if we wait on the direction of the committee and go to where the addendum is, review of the drug court coordinator job description and consider changes, probably a good thing with the internet now that I just have this aversion to being paperless, even though the court is. So but really it's because I didn't have time. So there is an example Richland job description. Here is the current, drug court coordinator job description. And it's very, very minimal, and in talking, like moving this over, we really looked at, you know, what that job description, has on there and needing to revamp it. So we wanted some, at least input from this group. I'm not in favor, so I went to the grantors, the TAD grantors, and asked them, Heather Cusack is the state evidence-based, person. The Richland job description was an example that they thought was pretty all-encompassing and a good one to go by. It is much more detailed than our current one now, but, anyway, I did look at it in detail. I think it's good. The only thing that I would add is that there needs to be a line added that the drug court coordinator is responsible for the grant and the grant reporting and continued, sustainability.
Well,
Yeah.
this is a lot to digest. Is this something that we could take back, read, and then send like emails to you with suggestions? One of the thoughts, you know, that I had as you're talking about the grant and reference, how does that dovetail with what, you know, the bylaws committee is doing and some of the other, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanna like digest and think about this.
And that's fine, because, this would just be a recommendation to, personnel about, you know, the job description. So if people could weigh in, though, we are in a crisis area with getting a coordinator back in the treatment court. We can't move like tomorrow on it, but, we wouldn't wanna wait until next month for everybody to weigh in just on this, because it's gonna be personnel, probably the end of the month, that would have to approve a new job description anyway.
We have 2 weeks
Oh, yeah.
to give you input?
Yeah.
And then, just because you mentioned it, do we have an update on when we might be able to get a coordinator in place? Because you're right, it's dire.
Well, we're gonna have a definite answer very, very soon, so, yeah.
So it's up to the personnel committee on the status of that position.
Right, and does that committee have a date where that decision gets made, where we can expect that?
They just met last night, so there isn't a date, but personnel meets, you know, before their regular monthly meeting.
And I believe the situation will be addressed next Thursday. I think they meet is the 3rd.
Okay, so, yeah, that's helpful to know. It is a priority. I mean, I think everybody knows that, yeah, we need to get somebody in there. Okay, so direction of committee, general direction, does anybody wanna make any comments about that before we adjourn? No? I think we're all just gonna wait for the coordinator to get on board and help us with direction.
Send in your recommendation for the bylaws and
Yes.
we'll consider them, but, by the middle of next week, please. Cause we wanna finalize this and get it to the executive committee so somebody else can look at it. Thank you.
Alright, thank you, everyone. I don't think we need a motion on this one. Email that contract to you?
Yeah.
Did you get your badge?
Yeah.
Get your badge? Hmm? Okay, well, I signed the form and everything, so all you have to do is get your badge.
Judge, I'm gonna schedule that for next committee meeting relatively soon. I think
Next
it,
to the
they
quick.
got the sheriff's department, we
So I gotta come sign your.
appoint a representative.
Okay.
to the police department.
Absolutely, yeah,
Thank you so much.